Okay, so you want to run CJNG Cartel. You are the most wanted man in North America. The United States has $10 million on your head, and the reason is an organization valued at $50 billion, more than the entire economic output of Bolivia, more than double what McDonald's, every restaurant on Earth combined, turns over in a year. And that count is from 2017, the last time anyone dared to total it. You operate in 27 of Mexico's 31 states, plus the capital. Around 19,000 people work for you. The count moves because nobody's payroll department returns calls. Your product lines run from cocaine to methamphetamine to fentanyl to stolen gasoline to telephone fraud. And one man in your fuel division, clears tens of millions of dollars a year siphoning gasoline out of the national pipeline grid. And the whole machine runs on a single rule. Your name is on nothing. Not a deed, not an account, not a company, not even the cartel, which carries the name of a state, Jalisco, while you carry an alias. The government hunting you is holding a $50 billion problem it cannot attach to a single signature. You learned that trick at the bottom, on both sides of the law. You start about as far from $50 billion as a life can start, a boy picking avocados in the hills of Michoacán. As a teenager, you cross the border north and sell heroin in California, where American street prices hand you half of your education one corner at a time. 3 years in a federal prison, then deportation, and back home a police uniform in Jalisco, which hands you the other half. What the law knows, what it costs, and what it lets go. Between those two jobs sits the whole business. A kilo of cocaine leaves a laboratory in Colombia worth about $2,000. Landed in Mexico, the same kilo is worth $12,500. Walk it one more border and it's $20,000 in Texas, $45,000 in the big cities, more in New York. Same kilo, same purity, same brick. Nothing was added but distance and risk, which means you were never really in the drug business at all. You're in the geography business, and the border is the margin. For years, the Colombians owned that margin and paid Mexicans a fee to carry the bricks. Then, in the 90s, they started paying the carriers in product, up to half of every load, because cash was scarce and cocaine wasn't. And that one bookkeeping decision rewrote the continent. A delivery man paid in inventory has to open his own shop to sell it, and now the delivery man is a competitor with better geography than his boss. That's the opportunity you inherit. The one you build is bigger, because a coca field needs land, seasons, harvests in a country you don't control, and a fentanyl operation is a room. About $60,000 of equipment, raw chemicals sailing in through the Pacific ports, and a kilo that costs about $7,000 to have in Mexico is worth $15,000 at the border. No weather, no harvest, no Colombia. In 2013, your son runs that math and makes a pledge to do it big. An empire pressed into counterfeit Oxycontin pills laced with fentanyl sold to Americans who think they're buying pharmaceuticals. All you need is the company to put it through. The opening comes in 2010 when the Mexican army kills Ignacio Coronel, Nacho, the man running the Sinaloa Federation's Western operations, and your patron. The Federation assumes his territory will fold back in. Instead, you take the armed remnant and register the startup under a name that carries no trace of you, Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generación, the Jalisco New Generation, named after a state, not a family, because a family name is a lead and a state name is a shrug. The finance department arrives by marriage. Your wife's brothers run Los Cuinis, the quiet money men of the trade, and the wedding works less like a romance than a merger. Your trafficking operation on one side, their laundering and investment network on the other. From that day, the business has two faces that never touch. One moves product, one moves money. The operating model is a franchise. The map divides into plazas, territories, and each plaza gets a boss who runs it like a licensed branch. Labs cooking fentanyl, cocaine, and methamphetamine, routes north, attacks on everything illegal that moves locally, and a percentage kicked upstairs. Plaza bosses in Jalisco and Zacatecas run the labs and the cross-border distribution, and an armed wing in matching uniforms and factory-armored trucks handles what the franchise agreement would politely call enforcement. Below the guns, it looks like a mid-sized conglomerate, because it is one. Resorts, shopping centers, real estate companies, restaurants, agricultural firms, shell companies stocked inside shell companies, dominant outright in 6 states. And the chart holds together on one design rule: no seat belongs to anybody. Every name on it, plaza boss, accountant, general, is built to be replaced the day it's arrested or shot. And one day, the chart will prove that rule on the biggest name it has, which fittingly isn't a name at all. The chart carries only the alias the hills gave you, El Mencho. So where does a $50 billion balance sheet actually come from? Layers. Drugs are the anchor, and the scale is precise. In your son's years running operations, the organization moves more than 50 metric tons of cocaine and runs laboratories that produce more than 1,000 metric tons of methamphetamine, 1,000,000 kilograms of a single product. Run the corridor math on the cocaine alone. The markup between a Mexico kilo and an American kilo is about $10,000, so 50 tons is $500 million of margin from one product line at one desk before a gram of the meth or a single fentanyl pill is counted. Gasoline is the layer nobody outside Mexico expects. Fuel theft has its own word here, Huachicol, and its own method. Drill a top into a state-owned Pemex pipeline and bleed it into trucks. In 2024, the national grid loses 987 million liters that way, about 260 million gallons, and the theft costs the Mexican state billions a year. Your cost of goods is a drill bit and a man brave enough to use it, and some of the product retails through gas stations the organization owns outright. Stolen at wholesale, sold at the pump for full price, with receipts that look clean because the gas station is real. Then, the layer that sounds like a joke until the totals land. Timeshares. An insider at a resort sells your people the owner's list, names, phone numbers, contract values. Your call centers ring American retirees posing as brokers with a buyer already waiting, and a pitch is beautiful because it never asks for the timeshare, only fees, closing costs, transfer charges, Mexican taxes, wired ahead, refundable at closing, of course. There is no buyer, there is no closing. Since 2019, that script has pulled nearly $300 million out of American victims. In 2024 alone, 900 complaints land on the FBI's desk reporting more than 50 million lost in a single year. No cargo, no border, no product. A phone, a spreadsheet, and someone else's trust. And under it all runs the oldest revenue in the world, derecho de piso, the floor fee, rent for existing on your territory. In Michoacán's avocado belt, the same orchards you picked as a boy, growers pay between $135 and $500 per hectare, about 2.5 acres, every month, priced to the size of the farm and to how afraid it is. The crop you once harvested for pesos now pays you rent by the acre. 4 layers, 1 shared ending. Everything converts to cash, rooms of it, in bills. And cash at this scale is a problem because $50 billion has to live somewhere, and none of it can live under your name. Hold that thought. A room full of $20 bills isn't wealth, it's evidence. It can't buy a ranch, can't hold a hotel, can't sit in a bank, not until it wears a name, and the name can never be yours. So the empire's biggest hidden cost isn't bribes and it isn't bullets, it's the wash, an entire second economy, legal on paper, earning nothing, whose only product is names. The plumbing runs backward along the smuggling routes. Crews collect bulk cash in American cities and move it south. And one cell in Guadalajara alone turns tens of millions of dollars a year back into spendable money. One cell of many, because this operation needs what any conglomerate needs: financiers and brokers and accountants, except yours can never advertise.
A single washing route runs through 167 companies dressed as tequila businesses, agave farms, bottlers, exporters, 1,770 people deep, moving $666 million through domestic accounts, $330 million in international transfers, and $137 million in raw American cash. And one senior manager's holdings on paper read like this: a baby shoe company, an agave ranch in Jalisco, a beverage crop company in Nayarit, a private security firm licensed legally to carry firearms. The officers of every one of them, his family. Secretary, treasurer, partial owners, a wife here, a cousin there, each holding a title. And in his town, Tepocatepec, the director of public safety is a relative, and two of his nephews wear municipal police uniforms. The police here were never bribed, they were hired. Every company is a container for a name, every name is a relative, and every relative is a wall between the money and you. A permanent, salaried, legally incorporated shadow economy that produces nothing and protects everything. And every one of those names sits in a public registry, secretary, treasurer, owner, filed, stamped, and legible.
A legal conglomerate defends $50 billion with courts, contracts, lawsuits, trademarks, police. You have none of that. When a rival takes a plaza, when a supplier shorts a load, when a franchisee stops paying up, there is no judge to call. So the Army is your legal department, and you keep the best armed criminal organization in Mexico. Uniforms, armored trucks, belt-fed machine guns, and a doctrine of using them in public.
So the Army is your legal department, and you keep the best armed criminal organization in Mexico. Uniforms, armored trucks, belt-fed machine guns, and a doctrine of using them in public because deterrence is the only contract law you have. The margin funds the war, and the war protects the margin.
But an army burns through men faster than volunteers arrive, so recruiting becomes an industry with its own funnel. A job posting, security work, drivers, good pay, then a pickup point, a bus, and a ranch the recruits never leave. The ones who take the training become hitmen. The ones who refuse become the reason the ranch has a burn site. In March 2025, it isn't soldiers or police who finally walk onto one of those ranches, Izaguirre and Techitlan. It's mothers searching for their missing children. And what they find is over 400 abandoned items of clothing, stacked and silent. Every act of violence that protects the margin also upgrades your opponent. In 2015, one of your convoys is cornered from the air, and your son gives an order no cartel had given before: shoot the helicopter down. 9 servicemen die that day, 9 of the more than 100 killings he will order, and somewhere in there, you stop being a police problem. You can outgun the police. You can, apparently, outgun the Air Force once. But in February 2025, Washington reprices the whole war. Your organization is designated a foreign terrorist organization, the same legal category as ISIS, and terrorism unlocks the other arsenal, the one that doesn't wear body armor: accountants. 250 people and companies designated, 3,337 associates arrested in the United States in a single year, and every name in every registry: the shoe company, the agave ranch, the security firm, now a door the Treasury can walk through. The chart has survived every name it's lost so far. Its biggest test is on its way. They start with the heir, your son, Ruben, El Menchito, the boy who pledged to do it big, is taken in Mexico, flown north, and put in front of a Washington jury in September 2024. And the empire that wrote nothing down gets measured anyway, out loud, witness by witness, in an air-conditioned courtroom 4 borders from the hills where it happened. The 50 tons, the 1,000,000 kilograms, the helicopter, the 100 murders, everything you built to be uncountable, counted, into a record, under oath. March 7th, 2025. Life in prison plus 30 years to run after it, and one more line from the bench: an order to hand back $6 billion of drug proceeds.
That should be the end of the story. The heir in a cell for the rest of his life. It isn't even the end of the year. On February 22nd, 2026, on a ranch outside Tapalpa, Jalisco, Mexico, Mexican security forces finally reach the man they have hunted for 15 years, and the 59-year-old who dies on that hillside gets his full name back at last, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, the boy from the Avocado Hills, the ex-cop. He never spent a single night in a Mexican cell. The state that couldn't catch him could only kill him. The empire sends its condolences the only way it knows. Within hours, 252 blockades ignite across 20 different places, buses dragged across highways and burned, tire spikes scattered on the roads, gas stations attacked. 48 hours of coordinated shutdown, wide enough that whole states suspend school. It looks like an empire collapsing. It's the opposite. Command and control functioning without its commander, exactly what the machine was built to do. Because now, watch the state try to collect. The precedent is his old rival. When the Americans convicted El Chapo, the court ordered him to repay $12,666,181,704 and has recovered less than 1% of it.
The $6 billion order on the sun meets the same physics because the money was never in a vault waiting to be found. It's in hotels, in investments, in passive income, in shell companies holding shell companies, in relatives' names on incorporation forms, in cryptocurrency spread across Mexico, the United States, Europe, and Asia. Set the state's entire scoreboard against the estimate and it reads, $50 billion in the empire, and the largest freeze anyone ever managed touched about 2 cents of every dollar. And frozen isn't collected. The fullest org chart of the business that exists anywhere on paper was drawn by the United States Treasury, 250 names long, and it still doesn't have the money on it. And the seat? 4 months after Tapalpa, the Treasury announces its largest action ever taken against the organization, more than 50 people and companies in a single sweep, and buried in the middle of the release, the state itself publishes the succession, the new leader of the Jalisco new generation, promoted from inside the family, Juan Carlos, El Pelon, the stepson. Reward for his capture, $5 million. The market apparently prices the seat at half what the founder cost. The chart met its biggest test and did the only thing it was ever designed to do. It replaced the name. They got the body. The books were never found. So, do you still want to run El Mencho's empire? Then understand what it actually was, because it was never a story about one man in the hills. It's what a corporation becomes when you subtract the law. Contract enforcement becomes an army, recruitment becomes a ranch, accounting becomes tequila brands and baby shoes, and succession planning becomes a press release from the United States Treasury, because the state can kill an owner, but it has never once repossessed the company. In the next time your phone rings with a stranger offering exactly what you paid for your timeshare, fees up front, refundable at closing, of course, remember whose call center that might be. Because the cheapest margin this empire ever found wasn't cocaine or gasoline. It was the trust of people 4 borders away. Subscribe if you want the next set of books opened. This one was never signed. Thanks for watching.